have a horror film for you, even if you're not really into horror films. Can I tell you my thoughts about the deaf horror girl film Hush? When this film first came out, I really loved it. I thought it was an interesting take, like a new twist on the film Wait Until Dark, which is actually my favorite Audrey Hepburn film. But the film is about a woman who went deaf in her teenage years, but as an adult, she's a successful novelist who lives alone in this big house in the middle of the woods. And one evening, a serial hunter guy comes to torture her after killing her friend right outside her house. One of the best things about this film was part of its climax, which is where she, as a novelist, is running all of the potential scenarios in her head of what she could do as her next move, and then demonstrating to the audience in a full scene why it wouldn't work, and that when she arrives at the final conclusion of what it is she needs to do, that you as an audience pretty much agree with her. When doing some light research of the director and the woman who plays the main character of this film, it turns out they're married, and both of them were involved in the creation of the script. They came up with the concept over a dinner date in 2014. Moreover, when they were both writing this script, Kate would stay inside the house while Mike, the guy who went on to direct the film, would find ways of trying to break into the house, and they would role play out the scenarios for the script. But if it didn't have any good practical application, they didn't write it into the scenes. They were pretty convinced that their neighbors thought they were fighting a lot because Kate was constantly locking Mike out of the house and he was trying to break in through window. The other really neat thing about how they wrote this script for this movie, Hush, is that they wanted to create an environment in which the characters properly took care of their wounds. Like if someone got stabbed, if someone got a cut on their leg, they would go treat their wound and not just be this endless fest of like, haha, it's a jab of blood from a knife, and then the character like seemingly forgets about it 10 minutes later. For Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel, they found that their cup of tea for horror does lean more into the thriller aspect of the genre more than it does what they call the Colosseum blood and gore of it all, where people have spectacle with a bunch of splatters of blood or exploding heads. I'm not big into gore horror personally either, so their taste in horror is much closer to the vibe that I really, really like. And despite all of these good things that I feel like I have to say about the film Hush, it turns out there's a very specific audience that really does not like this film. It's the deaf community. I was really interested in this movie after watching it, and I did some research behind the scenes kind of stuff, and that's where I found those other facts about how it was written as a script. But in that, I also found out that there's a particular YouTuber, we're not going to say their name, but they are very vocal about the fact they hate this film, to a point where this person is actually blocked on social media from contacting Kate or Mike because they harassed them so much about their critique over this film of Hush. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait, okay, now I really gotta listen as to what this person has to say about why they don't like this movie, because the main character is deaf and they're doing signs and it looks pretty legit. Now, this person, let's call them made up name, Lily. I think her complaints range from like nitpicky to I can't unsee it now and I just have to choose to suspend disbelief. Suspend belief? Choose disbelief. I can't remember how that's said. Please comment below. Let me know. So nitpick number one that Lily had is when it comes to sign language, and I'm not using any sign language, I just like to emote with my hands, I'll be very clear, is when you're doing sign language or ASL, it's common to have big facial expressions or big exaggeration of your body as you're moving and talking with your hands. Very similar in the way that I am giving inflection to my words. How they go up, how they go down, how I can exclaim things, how I can say, yeah, I'm bored with that. You can hear my tone of voice, and it's not much different for those who sign as well. There's a scene in particular where Kate's character is signing to someone of concern, but the way that she signs is very muted and calm, as opposed to like giving big facial expressions of, wow, it's loud, right? The comparison of being like, ah, it's loud, or, oh, that's loud. This Lily person says that the film totally missed the mark on that. Like, yeah, the technical signs are correct, but the way that Kate is acting it, she's got huge problems with. We as an audience have sound mixing that makes us more empathetic to what's happening to Kate, because that's how I would feel panicked in a situation, listening for the sounds, trying to use my hearing as much as possible. For someone who is actually deaf watching this movie, they have a completely different experience based on Kate's personal acting choices of how she signs. Because I don't know ASL, but the way that she argues out makes a lot of sense. The other nitpick that Lily has with this film is that Kate's character has a tendency to either be completely oblivious to the world around her, or just have these amazing superhuman abilities, especially when it comes to lip reading. Even people who practice lip reading, if they're like crazy good at lip reading, they drop 30%-ish, or only pick up, what was the thing I wrote down? Yeah, it's the opposite. You only pick up about 30% of a conversation by reading someone's lips. Because there are words that we say that have similar mouth formations, food or good, even though you can hear my guttural g and the plosive f coming out of my lips. When you can't hear those, it's a tradition. I swear I don't do it on purpose. I constantly hit my mic. Most deaf people don't lip read. And those that do, it's very light and it's always combined with sign language. So sign language, I don't even know what that means. Maybe I shouldn't use my hands. I'm super worried now. I'm very self-conscious. I don't think I could do the rest of the video like this though. She gets a window broken behind her as the intruder finally breaks into the house and sneaks in behind her, and she notices nothing of the shattered glass dancing around her feet. As he's standing behind her, she feels a breath on her neck from him breathing out. Again, a different experience for someone who is completely deaf experiencing this film versus someone who is fully hearing like myself. Her last complaint is that why didn't they cast a deaf actor or actress? Why Kate? And I've got some counter argument to that, to be honest. The thing about Hush is it came out in 2016. Now, at this time, Mike Flanagan, as a director, was picking up some steam in his career. He did Before I Wake with Netflix, which had some pretty good success. He also did the Ouija sequel. The Ouija sequel did way better than the original. Like, the original, I think, got like 4 to 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll put it on the screen. But the sequel did okay. I'll put that on the screen too. Because Mike's storytelling is just that good. He took a trash franchise and he made a sequel that was way better. Since Mike's career was just really picking up and Hush was a passion project of him and his wife, Kate Siegel, it's Siegel, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Siegel? No. I've said Siegel like 6 times in this video and I've said it. If I've said it wrong, please comment it below and help me to learn for the future. That's all I ask. Kate wasn't really that well known of an actress at that time either, because her explosion of career happened during The Haunting of Hill House. If you guys remember, that was a massive splash on Netflix when it came out. Everybody suddenly knew Mike Flanagan's name. Everyone could recognize Kate Siegel. If she sees this, I'll feel real bad because she's one of my favorite actresses. I do agree, hiring a deaf actress for this role would have massively benefited this film. I don't think it would have been a practical choice for Mike and Kate to do that. The reason being is because this is what we call a shoestring budget. This was a single location, shot in 18 days, 100% at nighttime, and even Mike admitted he had a really difficult time getting funding for this film. What I'm willing to bet is because this is Kate's project too, maybe she took some kind of cut as far as like what her compensation would have been as a lead actress, carrying almost all 1.5 hours of this film on her back. I imagine that probably helped the budget quite a bit because they wanted to just see it come to life. Instead of casting a different SAG actress who was also deaf, would have probably been way more costly than what they could probably afford at that time. All right, so here are my nitpicks. I agree with the porch thing of the friend banging on the glass when there are literally 2 other options on this set immediately in front of you for you to try. And it's not like you even tried the main entrance door. You tried the side porch door to the kitchen. And that's where you got stuck for a solid 8 to 10 Mississippi. You had so much time. And for the rest of this film to be so beautifully thought out as far as dungeon sense of how do I react, what do I do next, I can't unsee that. All in all, I do think this is a really fun movie to try, especially if you're not big into horror. This leans more into thriller. There are a couple of bloodier scenes. It's fun, and it was a passion project that got brought to life. And that's something that I really appreciate about most horror films, especially more independent horror films, is that it is truly a love of the horror genre. It's a way that we can tell modern day fairy tales, because the Grimm's fairy tales weren't so happy. They were actually quite bloody, very violent, and had a lot to do with a morality tale of some kind. And that's what I feel about horror today, is that it's got some interesting messages that we could obscure through horror to take an introspective look together collectively as an audience. Thriller factor of 1 to 10, I'm gonna give this a 10. I really think they did a good job walking a line of tension between just two actors for a solid 40 minutes of the film. That's incredible. That's really hard to do. And at least the tension was there for me because, again, I could empathize very heavily with what I was seeing on screen and hearing on screen because I thought the sound mixing was lovely. It really pulled me in and it kept me there. So the thriller factor here, I think, is definitely up. Gore rating. This is 1 to 10. I'm debating whether I want to keep this rating or not because more gore doesn't mean better for me personally. That score rating is like a 1 is like, you don't see much, but you see violent actions, and a 10 is the lens is just washed with fake blood, right? You know the kind of films I'm talking about. I see you, Cabin in the Woods. This is a 6. There is blood on screen, there is stabbing, there is violent actions that do happen, but they are far and few between, and they're not exactly gratuitous, and even the one that did have the most blood splatter was kind of playful. It like splashed blood onto the lens of the camera. For me, a 6, like 4 to 6 is my kind of vibe as far as gore rating. Here's another one, which is storytelling, 1 to 10. I give this a respectable 8. I think it's an original story. I really like a lot of the scenarios they brought together and how the characters interacted and played off of each other. The reason for the knockoff of a few points is because I now have a different understanding of a different audience that experienced it in a completely different way. Not a 10, let's give it an 8 to show respect that this is actually not made for everybody, even if it had good intentions. Production value. Okay, yeah, this for me is a 9. A single location shot all at night, done in like 3 weeks. Woo! Oh, to make it look that good? Dang, you guys! The other thing about the production value I really liked, whoever took care of continuity through this film, I was watching the way that the costumes would degrade. They'd get dirty in a specific way when a character fell into the dirt, or if they got, cut, then the blood would be there. They were so unbelievably specific of the progression of both characters' costumes. Special effects. This is a middle of the road 6. It's not like they did anything groundbreaking. They did have a little bit of blood CGI, and they had a respectable retractable knife. Yay! Okay, y'all, that brings us to a total of 39 out of 50. Again, I think I'm gonna get rid of the gore rating. I might just make that separate from this score system. I'm not a 10 gore blood person. A 10 for me is something like Cabin in the Woods or Silent Hill. And the only reason I mentioned Silent Hill is because I tried watching that today, and there was one scene in particular. I was at the gym trying to watch Silent Hill while I was on the treadmill. A couple of moms on the treadmills next to me, and I'm watching this one scene where the guy with the triangle head goes to literally rip the skin off of a live woman, and I freaked out and covered the screen of my phone. That's like a 10. That's a lot. Ugh. What am I watching? Why am I doing this to myself? I'll give you a review on that one next. How about that? The thing is, I've never seen the video game. I've never played it. And I don't know anything about the film. Anyway, I got opinions. We'll talk about them later. Bonus fun fact round. The book that the main character Kate plays is writing is called Midnight Mass. And even in the dialogue of the film, they talk about characters, one of which she goes on to play 5 years later on Netflix. The main character, Maddie, who is played by Kate, and Max, her younger sister, are actual names of Kate's family members. They did that as a tribute to them as a fun little nod. Other fun fact, there's only 15 minutes of actual dialogue that exist in this film. There's a remake of this film in 2019, an Indian version of this film that exists, and I think it got remade twice. Both Kate Siegel and I'll just stick with Kate. It's the end of the video, but I'll just stick with Kate. Kate and Mike are both big fans of Stephen King, and even on the set of Hush, in the bookcases in the background, you can notice a couple of Stephen King novels. One of them, which is Mr. Mercedes, and the other, which is Under the Dome. Thank you for joining me on my review of Hush. What were things that you loved about the movie? What were things you didn't like about the movie? Comment them below because I really want to read them all. Please subscribe to this video channel. It's new, and I'm trying some new things. I decided to go full pajamas today, but I figured it'd be like movie night. Let's get in our pajamas and let's talk about the horror film we just watched. In any case, I hope you're having a lovely night, and I will see you soon. Bye. Moment of truth. Did it record? It did. I'm trying this again in 3, 2, 1, sync. I've actually got some really positive things to say about the sequel Ouija film. We'll talk about that at some other point too.